Welcome to those of you who are new. I am Tina Montemayor, founder and principal designer of Tina Montemayor Design. It's an interior design firm specializing in bespoke interiors for tastemakers and change makers alike. I am excited to share. I think this one's a really juicy video on why dopamine design works in luxury and when it doesn't. So I'm sure you've heard this term being thrown around this year. It's very trendy now in 2025. Started a bit last year, seeing dopamine and that word like just being thrown out left and right. So you've probably seen dopamine interiors all over Instagram. We're talking bright colors, playful shapes, high energy. But how do you translate that into a luxury home without it looking like a trend gone wrong? To be honest, most of what you see on Pinterest or Instagram is frankly too much, and they look so tacky. They skew juvenile, maximalist, and unlikely to age well. And I think very few people can actually live in that kind of environment day after day. Today, I'll share why I love it, when it works beautifully, when it doesn't, and how I approach it with my clients. Why I love dopamine interiors, I think everyone can agree that the state of the world right now, we could all use dopamine, right? And in healthy doses, not like where we are like, click, need more, need more. But where it's just like a fun little surprise that kind of stimulates some joy. What I absolutely love about it is that sense of agitation and stimulation that creates pause and energy. When done right, it's deeply personal. So I'm going to show examples, and some might resonate with it. Others might be like no, that's just normal for me. So take everything that I'm suggesting with a grain of salt. What dopamine style and design means to one person is not going to be the same definition for another. But what excites me about dopamine interiors isn't a room that's plastered in neon, but the unexpected pause and stimulation a single bold element can create, especially for someone like me who's a absolute geek about the psychology of it all. I love the juxtaposition of a punch of color or a daring pattern or unpredictable curve against a more traditional classic backdrop. It modernizes the space and it gives it another layer of dimension. Adds a sense of interest to timeless architecture. And although you'll find a plethora of examples that illustrate it, it's not just about paint choices. Dopamine design, if done properly, is deeply personal. It shows up in textiles, patterns, sculptural shapes, art, and objects that may hold meaning for the homeowner. It can even be in scents and smells. But for it to feel luxurious, it has to be considered. Scattered color and gimmicky blocking make it look dated and over designed. So that's the key. It can't look over designed. It has to be just like a moment, a punch of something, right? So true luxury comes from restraint, editing down to a few key injections of joy, counterbalanced by neutrals and negative space. I'm going to cover elements that can be implemented and injected to constitute dopamine decor design. First, starting with the most obvious, which is color. Part of why dopamine interiors works is because color directly impacts how we feel. For example, vibrant yellows and oranges are energizing, blues and greens can calm or center us, and pinks often create a sense of warmth and softness. In dopamine design, it's not about painting every wall bright. It's about using just enough of that charged color to spark an emotional reaction. That's what creates that little hit of joy when you walk into a room. So, an example from color psychology, if you want to really get nerdy about it, is what separates dopamine core colors from just any bright color is their ability to trigger positive emotional responses consistently. They work on a multitude of levels. So, physiological impact, some colors like certain shades of red and orange can actually increase your heart rate and energy levels. This is why a lot of restaurants and food industries use the colors. Cultural associations, while color meanings vary across cultures, some emotional responses seem nearly universal. So, yellow tends to read as cheerful and energetic in most contexts. Again, calming blues or tranquil greens. Um, each color plays its own symphony in your brain, from the invigorating beat of yellow to the soothing melody of blue. Do not be afraid to experiment and find color combinations that resonate with your unique personality. I think personal connection, again, our individual experiences with colors matters too. So I always ask clients about colors they're naturally drawn to before introducing new ones. For example, I have glass these glass cups from IKEA in this. It's called baby blue, but it reads more periwinkle to me, which is actually, when I think about it, like I always see the color and it always brings me joy. My daughter has a jacket in the same color. And it wasn't obvious to me, but thinking back on it, this is the color of our old Dodge Caravan growing up. And that is meaningful to me. And it brings me back to those moments of childhood and joy. Another color for me is chartreuse. And that one's a little more obvious because I think that it'll resonate with more people. It's so bright and bold. And that color is joyful in general. Um, but for me, thinking back on it, it reminds me of tennis balls. And tennis was a big part of my youth. And like I used to play tennis with my dad, and it's a big sport in our family. So that's another color that resonates with me. Other things you have to consider are the spatial effects and illusion that certain colors can help to kind of emulate or support. So beyond color, it's not just about paint. Dopamine design can live in patterns. So we're talking unexpected stripes, checks, florals against other backdrops that are maybe more like muted or quieter patterns. Just like that, again, that punch of energy through something that's not as predictable, right? So, textiles and fabrics, so playful upholstery or drapery. The same can be found in shapes, so things that are a little more sculptural and curved against like straight lines and boxy silhouettes can be really um, can be really intriguing and spark that sense of joy and playfulness. Materials can also take play in dopamine design. Think like brass outlining a threshold or a unique marble or quartz on the backsplash of a dry bar. These are all elements and materials that can play really well into dopamine design. Um, Other items are things like art and personal objects that are deeply individual and personal and not obvious to anyone else. I think the key luxury differentiator is the intentionality and meaning behind the objects that you choose or the color that you choose. Um, so now I'm going to hit on when it doesn't feel luxurious. And I think it's kind of obvious from all these like Google searches and what I'm finding on Pinterest and Instagram. But over scattering all this color pattern feels very old school, cluttered, maximalist, unrefined. I can go on. Um, Gimmicky color blocking is very short lived and lacks refinement. It's something that you will get tired of very quickly. I think the premise is dopamine is a single hit of joy, and when it's everywhere, it will cancel itself out. So, again, there's a such thing as too much of a good thing. And the key here, again, is luxury equals editing, balance, counterpoint with a negative space, and neutrals. I think the best spaces for dopamine moments. There are a few in every house, and I think it works best in serious or more traditional rooms like living rooms, offices, formal dining, and primary bedrooms. The most successful applications, in my opinion, are in rooms where people least expect play. So, again, those are places where a bold gesture feels refreshing instead of overwhelming. And then it has to have that surprise factor. So, that unexpected hit of energy that transforms the mood or kind of like makes you feel something, right? It's again less effective in already playful or chaotic spaces like kids' rooms, playrooms. It'll just get lost in all the noise. And in powder rooms where bold or moody looks have been reigning supreme, it might feel disjointed from the rest of the house rather than a fun pop of play. So, as a homeowner, you wouldn't come across it all that often for the dopamine hit to be effective, if that makes any sense. Here's an example of my daughter's room. And I know I just mentioned that it doesn't work as well in kids' spaces, but because the color palette was so muted and the elements are a little more mature, um, this little hit of acrylic neon at, in the form of a side table was that just that little like hit of agitation and energy that made it feel fun and um, really made the space feel a little less serious. So again, it works really well in here because of the other elements being a little more conservative and a little more traditional. Client process. So when I guide clients through this, I start by studying their reactions to reference images, taking inventory of what they already own, and sourcing just one or two statement pieces. That way, the dopamine moment is authentic, timeless, and deeply personal. It's not just another trend plucked from a feed. I start by studying their reaction, reference images and images they source themselves, what they love versus what feels too much. I take inventory of their home. Do they already own art and textiles or objects that deliver like dopamine moments or that can act as a juxtaposition to like vignettes that you already have in their space? I then source intentionally an artist they gravitate towards or someone who can deliver that hit of energy that's still true to the client, a bold fabric, a sculptural piece, just one or two statement pieces. I always ask, is this authentically them or is this just a fleeting seen on Instagram desire? If I'm seeing a splash of color, pattern, line, or silhouette already in authentic pieces in their home, I know we're in safe territory. And although my job is to guide clients and advise them about the risks of certain design decisions, it's ultimately up to them. Dopamine design in luxury isn't about throwing every color into a room. It's about one intentional, surprising injection of joy. Very similar to how something is ever see something that's too like so perfect you don't even want to touch it. You don't want to go near it. You can't relate to it. Um, and you want to like just throw something in there that throws it all off. Like it ruins the perfection. I think a lot of people like me can relate to that. And I think that's also key in it is that it's something that if things feel too designed or perfect, to one note that there it calls for something, that spark of energy, that agitation again, to make it feel both not only personal but approachable and not too precious and not too serious. Um, so I think that's where like the magic takes place. So if you're curious about how I balance play and luxury in design, subscribe. I share process-driven insights every couple of weeks. I'm trying to do now. So thank you so much for joining. I will see you in the next video.